The Mechanologist class has evolved a lot since its release in Arcane Rising. I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that Mechanologist is my favorite class. I played every Mechanologist from -IE to Datadol, from Dio, Max Nitro and Teklevossen to Puffin. With Compendium's chapter in the history books and Omens on the horizon, I thought it would be a great time to reflect on the evolution of the Mechanologist class. We're doing a deep dive on the class's storied history, how they started, how they've changed, and how they'll continue to evolve in the future. In today's video, I'll be discussing the game's fundamental building blocks to break down the class's identity of abilities, action points, resource points, intellect, life, power, and defense. These building blocks will help us understand the class's core identity and how it's evolved over time. I'll cover Dash's high-octane beginnings in Arcane Rising, Teklevossen's evolution in Compendium of Rathe, and everything in between. While today's video will zoom in on the Mechanologist identity, let me know which class I should cover next. If you stick around until the end, I'll even spoil how Mechanologists will continue to evolve in Omens of the Third Age. To look at the evolution of Mechanologists, we have to start all the way back in Arcane Rising. While Welcome to Rathe established the initial foundation for the game we know and love today, Arcane Rising formed the complete Fab experience. Flesh and Blood's first 8 heroes showcase how each class could and would evolve over time, and Dash was no exception. While ninjas excelled at martial arts combos and brutes intimidated their foes, Dash Inventor Extraordinaire highlighted her class's affinity for items. Dash's hero ability let her start the game with the Mechanologist item in the arena. Mech items were extremely powerful at setting up value over several turns. For example, Teklocore provided 2 resources over the next 2 turns versus energy potions single use. Furthermore, Dash's specialization Spark of Genius let her tutor more items into the arena by paying twice its cost, and drawing her an extra card if she boosted that turn. While items were a core part of the Mechanologist identity, the class also excelled at action point manipulation. Induction Chamber gave Teklo Plasma Pistol's attacks go again, letting Dash reliably fire it multiple times each turn. The boost keyword gave the class semi-reliable access to action points, so long as a Mechanologist card was banished off the top. Dash could step on the gas by boosting through her deck, using it to fuel her action point economy. High Octane's action point generation supplemented the conditional go again from boost attacks. High Octane would create some incredibly broken synergies, which we'll talk about later in today's video. Lastly, Achilles' Accelerator provided boosting Mechanologists an extra action point once per game. This could save Dash's turn if she accidentally boosted a generic, continue the turn after playing an item, or finish games with one last Teklo Plasma Pistol shot to go wider than her opponents could block. Along with items and action points, resource generation was the third pillar of the class's identity. Mechanologists were efficient in maximizing the value of their resources. Teklo Plasma Pistol with Induction Chamber highlighted all 3 pillars simultaneously. These could be charged with steam counters ahead of time and remained loaded until needed. This allowed the class to transfer some spare resources and tempo in between turns. Teklocore was another item that helped Dash maximize the value of her resources. This specialization was often played at the end of the turn, or tutored with Spark of Genius. This item let Dash be much more flexible when optimizing the value of her next 2 turns. On one hand, the free resources let her block with more cards from hand while still sending back solid damage, while on the other, the 2 extra resources could instead be converted to full offense for maximum velocity gameplay. Teklo Foundry Heart also generated resources for boosting mechs. If Dash filled her tank with Mechanologist cards, Teklo Foundry Heart guaranteed an extra resource when activated. When combined with above-rate boost attacks, the trifecta of items, action points, and resource points helped Mechanologists outpace the competition. Early Dash builds could outvalue opponents offensively by going wide with boost attacks, or pivot defensively by bringing in generic defense reactions to supplement the class's ability to defend against physical and arcane damage. Following their release in Arcane Rising, the Mechanologist class continued to evolve in Crucible of War. Datadol expanded how Mechanologists would interact with items. At the cost of 3 intellect, she could put Mechanologist items directly into the arena whenever they were banished. The brand new item, Plasma Purifier, synergized perfectly with Teklo Plasma Pistol and Induction Chamber. Plasma Purifier made Teklo Plasma Pistol the most efficient weapon in the game, raising the weapon's damage ceiling from 8 to 20 damage. The set also introduced new cards to reward the class for boosting. Magnetic Shockwave helped decelerate opponents by forcing them to block with fragile equipment, while Combustible Courier and Overblast accelerated the class's offensive output. Like Overblast, Plasma Barrel Shot became more powerful with each boost on the combat chain. Last but not least, Crucible of War improved the class's access to Arcane Barrier. Visiertronic Model I supplemented Achilles' Accelerator perfectly, as mechs only needed 1 sideboard slot now to easily prevent 3 arcane damage. It would take another year and a half for mechs to receive more supplemental support in Everfest. The Carnival-themed set benefited all classes, but left a lasting impact on Mechanologists. Teclopounder was a brand new item that instantly saw play. Starting with a Teclopounder meant that Dash's opponents started with 6 less life in aggro matchups. Microprocessor was another accelerating item that helped Datadol play more aggressively. If you've ever played with or against Datadol in the original Blitz format, you probably know just how quickly Microprocessor can snowball the game in her favor. On the decelerating side of things, Signal Jammers shut down heroes that wanted to play multiple non-attack actions each turn. Simultaneously, Dissolution Sphere prevented massive amounts of damage into stacking rune blades like Viscerai and Florian. In addition to items, Everfest expanded the class's access to equipment disruption. Equipment was no longer safe against Mechanologists when Rainbow T-Bone was an option. The set also built on themes originally established in Arcane Rising, giving the class more access to opting, recursion, and dominate. While Crucible of War and Everfest supplemented already established Mechanologist themes, Dynasty would be defined by taking the class in completely new directions. Dynasty turned a single red hyperdriver from Arcane Rising into an entire archetype. Rainbow hyperdrivers were now available, with several cards printed to support the archetype. Hyperdrivers reduced Jumpstart's cost, making them extra copies of Zipper Hit, while boosted crankshafts extended the life of hyperdrivers on the board. However, the hyperdriver archetype was tied together with the Nitro Mechanoid. The Mechanoid could be constructed after 3 hyperdrivers were assembled alongside a full Mechanologist fridge. Like Tecloplasma Pistol, the Nitro Mechanoid could attack multiple times each turn as long as they had enough action points. With Galvanic Bender powering up its attacks, the Nitro Mechanoid could overpower opponents by dealing 47 damage and defending for 15 additional value. When combined with High Octane, the Nitro Mechanoid became an alternative win condition for Mechanologists. Following Dynasty, many Mechanologists built Dash to turbo-construct the Nitro Mechanoid as quickly as possible. While I've spent a lot of time talking about the shiny hyperdriver support, Dynasty also brought so many cards that expanded what Mechanologists could do. For example, Pulsewave Harpoon gave Mechanologists access to hand disruption, while Plasma Mainline transferred value to other Mechanologist items, largely fueling Teclopounders and Teclocores into grindy fatigue matchups. And lastly, Hanabi Blaster rewarded boost-focused builds, allowing them to send 5 overpower for free every other turn. Dynasty provided so many new tools for Mechanologists, but it also continued to explore previous themes seen in the class. For instance, Powder Keg and Scramble Pulse disrupted equipment in even more ways. Furthermore, BIOS Update gave all Mechanologists a light version of Datadol's ability, letting them put boosted items into the arena. By the time Bright Lights was announced, there were approximately 3 to 4 different ways to build Dash Inventor Extraordinaire. First were combo-oriented Nitro Mechanoid builds that went all in on hyperdriver synergies. Second were boost-focused aggro versions starting with Teclopounder, and sometimes even running Talishar. Third were defensive stalwarts that set up a board state of pistol items for late-game inevitability. And fourth and most popular were hybrid mid-range versions that adjusted their speed based on the matchup. As the Bright Lights heroes were revealed, Dash's archetypes had been fully developed into 3 new Mechanologists. Max Nitro turned the Nitro Mechanoid plan up to 11. The Hype could assemble his own hyperdrivers and even continue his turn by cranking them. His signature weapon Banksy could extend the life of his hyperdrivers or other crank items on hit. Dash.io, or Dio, combined the abilities of Dash and Datadol. Dio's extra processing power gave her the ability to play items from the top of her deck, and provided perfect top deck information. Dio was incredible at racing opponents, especially when she could always crank a surprise boom grenade off the top. Lastly, Teclovasan fully embraced OG Dash's defensive playstyle. Instead of pistol items, Teclo upgraded his base equipment with a board state of Evos. Once fully equipped, he could transform with Singularity. Like the Nitro Mechanoid, Teclovasan the Mechapotent almost guaranteed victory once assembled. Boost was central to the Mechanologist identity, and Bright Lights continued to support this mechanic. However, the set's 3 heroes synergize with the mechanic in drastically different ways. For Max, boosting helped him build up a board state of hyperdrivers to swing Banksy and fuel his combos. It also gave Dio more chances to crank items off the top and charge her Symbiosis shot. Lastly, boosting accelerated Teclovasan's ability to set up and play Evos from Banish. In addition to the 3 heroes, the set introduced a ton of items that spanned Flesh and Blood's building blocks. Additionally, the brand new Scrap, Crank, and Galvanize mechanics provided new ways to interact with all of the items. Bright Lights gave Mechanologists more forms of recursion, evasion, opt, and equipment disruption as seen in previous sets as well. While it would be more than a year and a half until the Mechanologist class got their next hero, the class continued to evolve through the release of pre-constructed armory decks. Approximately 1 year after Bright Light's release, LSS unveiled the Dash.io Armory deck. Like most Armory decks, Dash has brought an entirely new equipment suite. Heavy Industry Power Plant and Gearshift acted like combo versions of Teklo Foundry Heart and Achilles Accelerator respectively. When combined with Fast and Furious as well as Cerebellum Processor, these cards gave Dio unprecedented levels of power, as Dio's sum became greater than its individual parts. A great example showcasing this is Sam Sutherland's win and end game at the 2024 World Championships in Osaka. High Octane, System Reset, and Heavy Industry Gearshift created more than enough action points for Dio. Alongside High Octane, Spark of Genius and Cerebellum Processor, along with Optical Monocle, helped Sam cycle through his entire deck in a single turn. Teklocore, Heavy Industry Power Plant, and blues drawn off the top fueled resources for the turn. And lastly, every item fueled Symbiosis Shot for free chip damage with the extra action points. Inspired by Marco from the Teklo Foundry, Sam Sutherland unlocked these cards' perfect synergies to take Matt Rogers' Enigma down from 49 life in a single 27-minute turn.
But he marks it down, and Sam Sutherland
what a good
moves on to the World Championship top 8 on the most ridiculous turn I have ever seen.
While casting, Brian Gottlieb had this to say about High Octane's performance in this game.
Sam Sutherland might have just sealed High Octane's fate.
Even after High Octane was banned from Classic Constructed, the card would keep Dio relevant in the Living Legend format. Austin Henry would further optimize High Octane's combo ceiling with zero-cost boost attacks and even more card draw, finishing top 8 at the Battle-Hardened Baltimore, and pro players immediately began testing the new version of Dio. Worlds winner Michael Yasker recognized Dio's power in the Living Legend format, going 8-1 with her using a very similar list. While Max Nitro had seen some success with Nitro Mechanoid and High Octane, he struggled to compete after High Octane was banned. Before the bans, Joel Gibbons top 8'd the Calling Melbourne, and Francesco Lorenzi had won the Battle-Hardened Bologna on the hero. However, Max struggled to find competitive success following the High Octane ban. It seems like the developers at Legend Story Studios realized this, releasing Max's Armory deck shortly after the High Octane ban. The deck provided a variety of equipment to support the pre-existing Hyperdriver archetypes. However, the most interesting cards took Max in an entirely different direction from the Nitro Mechanoid plan. Construct Bankbreaker was an entirely new construct that would let Max level up his wrench instead of going all in on the Nitro Mechanoid. Like many other Mechanologist weapons, Bankbreaker could be swung more than once per turn, banishing hyperdrivers underneath to fuel its second attack. While Bankbreaker was limited to a twice per turn action, the second and third copies of Construct Bankbreaker could let Max swing his upgraded wrench up to 6 times in a single turn by reconstructing it with more hyperdrivers mid-turn. Another tool that powered up Max's wrench was Clamp Press. This card acted like a Teklo Pounder for Max's wrench attacks, making them much more difficult to block at 5 power. Plus, the new item was even crankable, letting Banksy keep it around indefinitely on hit. Shortly after the release of Max Nitro's Armory deck, Puffin Hightail would be added to the Flesh and Blood roster in High Seas. As a pirate mechanologist, Puffin combined the existing mechanologist identity with the brand new pirate class. Puffin's pirate side cared about creating gold, but her mechanologist half turned that gold into golden cogs. These cogs would help her draw extra cards and empower her attacks. Golden Skywarden was a great example of a card that combined both of Puffin's class identities. Defensively, this card galvanized golden cogs back into gold, helping Puffin maintain her board state of cogs. Puffin's avian sidekick Polly Cranka helped her reliably crank twice per turn. Unperched, Polly also pulled pressure away from Puffin herself. While High Seas didn't provide much support for mechanologists outside of Puffin, I'd argue that the set both solidified and expanded the class's identity. Puffin felt like an iteration of Max Nitro, synergizing with cogs instead of hyperdrivers. While Max had Jumpstart and Rev Up as hyperdriver payoffs, Puffin's attacks rewarded her for building up a board state of cogs. However, because these attacks didn't require Puffin to boost, she could run them alongside pirate and generic cards, or go all in on the mechanologist card pool with a faster, boost-focused list. Cog support from High Seas helped Puffin manage her fleeting board state of cogs, with Copper Cogs supplementing her resource base. At their worst, Copper Cogs could always be translated into 4 value with Spitfire across the next 2 turns. At their best, however, they would draw cards and accrue even more value with attacks like Cogworks Dovetail and Palantir Aeronaut. Since Copper Cogs were the first unlimited card in the game, Puffin lists would sometimes run 10 or more copies to round out her blue base. With a limited pirate card pool following her initial release, min-maxing and E-Man 112's early boost lists helped expert pilots make waves with Boost Puffin. Most notably, Florian Van Brakel and Aidan Barsoni would take Boost Puffin to top 20 finishes at the Calling Hamburg and Canadian Nationals respectively. Compendium of Rathe returned to the classic supplemental set formula. While non-Dash Mechanologists had seen limited competitive success following the high-octane ban, Compendium of Rathe aimed to make all Mechanologists more consistent. Despite its name, Teklo Trebuchet 2000 benefited all Mechanologists as a powerful zero-cost blue boost attack. Compendium of Rathe also made Max Nitro more consistent. Max got Assembly Module, which summoned hyperdrivers from deck, while Speed Demon scrapped hyperdrivers in the graveyard for even more value. Max also gained access to Heart Wrencher, which could be buffed by Clamp Press, becoming more powerful than 0 to 60 when combined. Pirate Puffin also became much more viable with the expanded card pool from Compendium. Her gold generation was made much more consistent with Baby Skywarden and Cheating Scoundrel. With Pirate Puffin's skill floor raised, players could now choose between either version of Puffin based on their preference and the given meta. Probably receiving the most support though is Teklovasen. His Evo plan was made more consistent with Beta Evos and Synapse Spark Cap. He even got his own Spark of Genius in the form of Ghost Protocol Architect. Furthermore, Blast Rig and Heavy Metal Hardcore raised the ceiling of boosting lists. Within 2 months of Teklo's newfound support, Shannon Puttery would top 8 the Pro Tour Yokohama, showcasing the strength of Boost Teklovasen. Now that we've covered Compendium of Rathe, it's important to look at how the class has continued to evolve through recent expansion slots. Like the Mechanologist class, their expansion slots have also evolved over the course of the past 2 years. Early expansion slots seemed particularly niche, but Part the Misfail began providing tailored support to improve the consistency of struggling Mechanologists. Supercell and Evo Recall made Max Nitro and Teklovasen more consistent, allowing these heroes to recycle their win conditions if boosted earlier in the game. Mech's identity continued to grow and evolve through the expansion slots, no matter how broad or targeted their support was. From Adaptive Dissolver to Misfire Dampener and Null Time Zone, to Adaptive Alpha Mold, Backspin Thrust, and Hit the Gas. However, Gear Turner is the class's newest evolution in Omens of the Third Age. Gear Turner provides Puffin with a powerful cog tutor, letting her search her deck for a cog and put it into the arena on hit. While mech tutors often get their value from the power of consistency, Gear Turner's 5 damage floor is raised even higher if the opponent allows it to hit. At 5 power, most opponents will need to give you 2 cards or a card and equipment to stop its on-hit effect. Tutoring a cog is most powerful in Puffin, generating action points, half a card draw, empowering her cog attacks, and buffing her defenses with Galvanize. As a 1-card hand with Tunic and Gold or Polycranka, Puffin can convert this 1 card into 7 or 8 damage, plus a card draw to take back tempo from her opponents. While Gear Turner is strongest in Puffin, Cranking Cogs has utility for Max Nitro as well. Gear Turner can help Max preserve steam counters on his hyperdrivers, while simultaneously threatening Banksy's follow-up if not defended. This card may seem innocuous on the surface, however, the Mechanologist class excels when their combos become greater than the sum of the individual parts. Gear Turner embodies how the Mechanologist class has continued to evolve over time, and I hope that you've enjoyed this video inspired by Gear Turner as much as I've enjoyed making it. Let me know your thoughts on Gear Turner, as well as your thoughts on the Mechanologist class's evolution over the past 6 years. Would you be interested in seeing the evolution of other classes? Be sure to let me know in the comments below. That's all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll teach you in the next one.